Today on Locked On Red Wings, the 2022 NHL Hall of Fame inductees were announced, and this prominent Red Wing was left off the ballot.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a producer over at 97.1 The Ticket, while Scotty is host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And Scotty, today we found out who was going to be the class of 2022 for the NHL Hall of Fame. And one big Red Wing made it, and one other one did not. And Daniel Alfredsson made the Hall of Fame, which that was a joking one because he only played 1 year here. But right. Henrik Zetterberg was left off the ballot. Both the Sedin twins made it. Roberto Luongo made it. So it was overall a pretty solid class. But to see Henrik Zetterberg not make it, definitely a little bit surprising.
Yeah, I completely agree. I thought it was really. I'm still sick as heck, by the way.
Are you? I couldn't tell.
I just want to make that clear as we go forward. No, I completely agree though. With the end of the Stanley Cup and with the drop of the documentary and everything, I had lost track of when the announcement was going to be made. This is something that I had circled on my calendar probably 2-3 weeks ago and then forgot about.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot other going on.
Right. So when I woke up this morning and somebody tweeted out like, Henrik Zetterberg is looking to get the call from the Hall of Fame this morning, and we'll all wait around and see. And I was like, oh shoot, that's right.
Yeah. Here we are.
And I you know what, I really thought he was going to get in. I truly did. And I mean, we'll get into the nitty gritty of all of it, I'm sure. But disappointing that he didn't make it, but not like the most shocking thing either.
Yeah.
And like he will be a Hall of Famer. It's just like voters really are stingy about first ballot versus not first ballot. Yeah. So he'll get in. He'll be a Hall of Famer. It'll all be fine. Voters in every sport are super nitpicky about who's a first ballot and who's not.
So let's look at who did make the Hall of Fame then, just before we get into whether or not Zetterberg deserves to be in this year or at all. Daniel Sedin, Henrik Sedin, the Sedin twins, both first ballot Hall of Famers. Henrik Sedin had 1,070 points in 1,330 games played across 17 seasons. He was the 2010 Art Ross Trophy winner. He was a 2010 Hart Trophy winner. He's a two-time All-Star, two-time Clancy winner. He and his brother, Daniel Sedin, who also has a Clancy and an Art Ross Trophy to his name, a Pearson Award, and two-time All-Star, also over 1,000 points and 1,300 games played. They played pretty much every single game. I have no qualms with them making the Hall of Fame because as time goes on, and this argument will be the same with Luongo and Daniel Alfredsson, who also made the Hall of Fame. As time goes on, hardware becomes less of an issue. They have personal hardware. I mean, getting the Art Ross and getting the Hart Trophy, especially, those are legitimate trophies to win during the regular season. You know, the Clancy Trophy is a humanitarian charity award. Basically, it's all your contributions off the ice. You get that, but when you come to the Art Ross and the Hart, those are trophies given to players that exemplify certain aspects of the game. Hart specifically for MVP, which Henrik Sedin won in his season where he had 112 points in 2010 with the Vancouver Canucks. So I don't have an issue with these guys, getting into the Hall of Fame because they have they don't have the postseason hardware.
Wow, he won the Hart without scoring 30 goals.
That's because he was a playmaking machine.
No, yeah, I mean he had dang near 85 assists, so like it totally makes sense. It's just like optically that's wild.
It's just that this Hall of Fame class, more so than any Hall of Fame class before it, has a severe lack of hardware going in. Now there's some, like I said, there is some minor personal hardware. The Hart Trophy is a pretty major one, but King Clancy, most people don't really look at. All-Stars, I don't really know if I don't think people
It's
really care
crazy to
for
me
All-Star
how
that
like
much.
well, I agree, but it's wild to me how like the Sedin twins, like Henrik made 2 All-Stars and Daniel made 2 All-Stars. So
Yeah.
like that's, it's just wild to be and like they deserve it. This is not
Yeah.
slander at all. They deserve to be Hall of Famers. Absolutely. I agree with it. The craziest thing to me too is just that like everything about the two of them together is so crazy to me. Like
Yeah.
we've never seen 2 people exactly mirror each other like we do the 2 of them. Like it's unbelievable. They were taken what, 2nd and 3rd overall
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
the
they were.
same draft, and then they debuted the same season, and then they retired the same season, and they both played for the exact same team their entire career. Like that's like no good or bad, no matter what. Like we will never see that ever again. I'm
Well,
very
and
confident.
I just have no idea how they swindled their way into the 2nd and 3rd overall pick to take them both. Because can you imagine if these two players had played? The reason and they were both, high level players without, being with each other, but having been taken 2nd and 3rd overall, playing with each other their entire
Oh my
career,
god.
they elevated their statistics the entire time. What are you laughing at?
So they went 2 and 3, right?
Yeah,
The number 1 overall pick that year, Patrick Stefan, who retired with 455 games played and 188 career NHL points.
yikes.
He played for the Atlanta Thrashers his entire, well, the 1 year of Dallas at the end, but Atlanta his entire career did not win a single accolade. He went 1-1 in the draft where the Sedin brothers went 2 and 3. That's just
That's right.
crazy.
It's
That's
crazy.
that's like a crazy like badge of honor almost though.
I just when it comes to these Sedin twins, man, they absolutely elevate. Like they almost had that twin telepathy people joke about, where they knew
No,
where
for
each other
real.
was going to be at any time, any point in time, and their chemistry just it was immaculate. And obviously that
Everything
comes with
about it's
yeah,
like their point totals within what, like 30 or 40 of each other for their
yeah.
entire career. Their game played totals are within like 30 of each other. Like they literally did like everything about them is the exact same.
Well,
It's
like Daniel
so
Sedin
unbelievable.
had a 104-point season. Like Daniel Sedin has multiple 30-plus goal seasons, where Henrik Sedin was definitely more of the playmaker of the two.
For
I
sure.
mean, seriously, look at it. Like Daniel Sedin or Henrik Sedin racks up all the assists, while Daniel Sedin racks up all the goals, and they're both
Correct.
having 80, 90, 100-point seasons, just feeding off one another. Like that was a fleece to be able to get them at 2 and 3. Absolutely astonishing. So I have no qualms with them making the Hall of Fame. It's mostly just when you take that juxtaposed to what Zetterberg has accomplished. And it feels like the only main reason Zetterberg hasn't made the Hall of Fame is because his career point total isn't there. He had over 1,000 games played, which is a huge benchmark. He just only had 960 points. He didn't get that 1,000th career point. So if he would have played one more season, and that's the thing is he played the least amount of seasons out of all the guys we're going to talk about today. He only
Yeah.
played 15 seasons. Well, Alfredsson and the Sedins played 17. I think Alfredsson actually played 18. So or 17. No, it was 18. Yep. 18 careers in the NHL. So, if he would have played the one extra 2 years on a bad back, he could have gotten to 1,000 career points. But
Yeah.
you look at personal hardware, it's very close between the three. And so you want to move on to like Daniel Alfredsson. It's the same argument. Alfredsson, out of all of them, probably has the least amount. He won the Calder in 95. He was on the all-rookie team that year. He's a one-time All-Star. He won the Messier Trophy in 13. That's the leadership award. So best leader in the NHL. And the Clancy for contributions off the ice. He has next to no personal accolades besides being a Calder Trophy winner, having over 1,000 career points, and having played over 1,000 games. He had no postseason success, just like the Sedin twins, who made one Stanley Cup final appearance in their career.
Yeah.
And that we're at an age now where, it doesn't necessarily matter. It doesn't necessarily matter if you win the Stanley Cup or not. It doesn't necessarily matter. And I understand that Alfredsson himself had some very phenomenal seasons. He had over 100 points in 2006, for instance, but no personal accolades, no playoff success, just point totals. And I get that there's competition, but for him to make the Hall of Fame, and granted, he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer like Henrik Zetterberg is, but for him to make the Hall of Fame and Zetterberg not it feels a little bit like a snub. I guess my question leading into segment 2 here, will be to you. Do you feel like Henrik Zetterberg got snubbed in this Hall of Fame class? But before I have you answer that question, I do got to talk to you guys today about BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL, playoffs, and Major League Baseball. BetOnline is continued source for all your sport wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports, scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. Bet online, where the game starts. Yeah, so segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. I will re-ask the question here because I kind of asked it, but I was like, I got to get an ad read in here. Do you, Scotty, feel like Zetterberg was snubbed in this Hall of Fame class when you can look at who went in ahead of him?
Yeah, I do, absolutely. And like I said at the beginning, like I don't think it's some catastrophic wrong that is impossible to be righted. Like again, I'm pretty confident he'll get in one of the next 2 years. It's just people are really adamant and really particular about who the first ballot Hall of Famers are. And at the end of the day, they probably looked and said, oh, well, we're not going to make a forward who had less than 1,000 career points and, doesn't have a ridiculous amount of individual hardware in as a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I'm sure they'll bring him in next year. But in a vacuum, the question being, the Hall of Fame class was announced. He was not on it. I think that's ridiculous. Yes.
I believe so. In most years, I would actually kind of, with where the bar is set, I would actually kind of agree with the fact that maybe Zetterberg isn't a first ballot. We both agree that he'll get in eventually. Like, yes,
Correct.
Zetterberg is a Hall of Famer. And you said it in the first segment, they're just stingy about who become. Like, you have to be an all-time great to get in first ballot. I don't believe that any of the guys that got in this year were all-time greats. There were some fantastic players, some elite level players, but not all-time greats. And so when you get guys like
maybe
Daniel
the
Sedin,
best Twitter account, by the way,
maybe the best, Roberto Luongo,
maybe the best Twitter account in NHL history got inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. So when you get guys like Daniel Sedin, Henrik Sedin, Daniel Alfredsson, Roberto Luongo, who more so than anyone has no personal accolades besides just being a consistently very good goaltender his entire career, all get inducted.
He had a Jennings.
Yeah, he won one Jennings, but no Vezinas, no playoff success outside of the Stanley Cup
this is
final
actually
appearance.
crazy. He had, excuse me, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He finished in the top 5 for Vezina 5 separate times and never won it.
But yeah, it's always been
once.
Close. It's tough. That's the
thing.
He
finished runner-up for the Hart one year and didn't win the Vezina.
That is rough.
How does that make sense? Because Crosby won the Hart that year. How does this make sense? How is this possible?
Yeah, who won the Vezina that year then? 2007.
Oh, Marty Brodeur won the Vezina.
Shocker.
But Luongo was runner-up. And Marty was third for Hart. All right, that makes sense. Good job, NHL. Anyway.
So my point being here is, again, these players were all very close to winning a lot of personal accolades. I almost said accolades. Very close to winning personal accolades. They absolutely were, and they were all very good. Elite level at points in their career, especially the Sedin twins. But for them to not have those personal accolades that Henrik Zetterberg does, and then Zetterberg to not make the Hall of Fame definitely feels like a snub, especially when Zetterberg himself came in second in the Calder, which sucks. He got snubbed that year, absolutely, for the Calder. But he came in second for the Calder his year. He won the 2008 Stanley Cup. He was the Conn Smythe winner for playoff MVP that year. And that is one hell of an accolade to win. At playoff MVP that year. He won the 14-15 Clancy, which I believe all of these guys have won. So he meets that bar of expectation. Yeah, Alfredsson and both the Sedin twins won the Clancy. He was a one-time All-Star, which is crazy to me that he's only been an All-Star once in his career. But he won a Conn Smythe, which I would argue is up there with like the Hart Trophy in terms of like weight to it. because the Hart Trophy means you're the MVP of the regular season. You were good through 82 games. But when it mattered most, Henrik Zetterberg turned it on and won the MVP of the playoffs to lead the Red Wings to the 2008 Stanley Cup. So he has his accolades, I would argue, carry more weight than what the Sedin twins, what Alfredsson and Roberto Luongo had done. The only downside to Zetterberg is the fact that he didn't cross that 1,000 point threshold. He never really had like a 100 point season. He had a 92 point season once his career. So the flack you can give Zetterberg, which is why I would normally agree with the argument that Zetterberg is not a first ballot Hall of Famer. It's just compared to who went in ahead of him this year is why I'm like, okay, if these guys are first ballot Hall of Famers, so should have Zetterberg. But Zetterberg career best season was 92 points. Outside of that, he was mostly in the 60s and 80s range. He was more or less just a playmaker. He had 140 goal season, 130, 230 goal, 330 goal seasons. So it's just he was consistently like dishing out goals and assists evenly, but just I don't know, man. It just feels it feels a little bit like a snub to me when you compare what his accolades were compared to what the other. Like, it's like they were just looking at point totals. And yeah, he didn't have a 100-point season, but he won the Conn Smythe. He's a Stanley Cup winner. That's something that Daniel Sedin, Henrik Zetterberg, Daniel Alfredsson, and Roberto Luongo all don't have.
Yeah, no, and like I said, I fully expect him, when it's all said and done, to be a Hall of Famer. But like, my thing is, if it came down to him not peaking at over 100 points, that's kind of weird and whatever. Like, this whole class was like you said, a lot of players who had a lot of really good longevity and were toward the top for a while, but maybe nobody that was necessarily like the bona fide best at or close to really the bona fide best of their position. We have a Hart in there for sure, but so like in this class of all things, like it makes it a little weird. But the argument that I hate is like, oh, he didn't have an 1,000-point season. Like,
1,000-point season?
Sorry, 1,000-point career. He okay, he was 40 points short of that. Like, you want him to, okay, if he would have just gone out there at 38 with no back basically, and just gone out there and averaged less than half a point a game, yeah, he'd be in the Hall of Fame right now. Like, that's so stupid. So like, I get it, but at the same time, I get it in the sense that, like, I fully expect him to be a Hall of Famer, but optically, when you're just looking at like, hey, this is the class, this is like we have the stats to every Hall of Famer who's ever existed right at our fingertips, right? It's kind of whack that there would be a voting to get someone into the Hall of Fame and he wouldn't make it.
Yeah, and so again, I believe that like every single one of these gentlemen deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. It's just that, the bar is inconsistent as to where it's at.
Right.
It's just the fact that Sedin twins got in and Roberto Luongo got in as, I think the Sedin twins were first ballot. Was Roberto Luongo first ballot? I can't quite remember. If this was his first ballot, rather, or not.
I don't remember Luongo.
I know Alfredsson
and I know the Alfredsson wasn't.
I know Alfredsson was not a first ballot Hall of Famer, which is why I don't really, that one I care less about him getting in. With anything, Alfredsson getting in just proves that Zetterberg will definitely get in at some point, because Zetterberg has more personal accolades and a Conn Smythe and a Stanley Cup, whereas Daniel Alfredsson just had literally just points pretty much to his name and a Calder. So like, if Alfredsson gets in, that just proves that the bar is below where Zetterberg is at. It's just when you compare Zetterberg to those Sedin twins, I'm just like, how do you let those two in? And they deserve to be in. They absolutely do. But how do you let those two in first ballot and not let Henrik Zetterberg in? I am happy that Luongo got in, though. I think he was a goaltender that was heavily overlooked his entire career. I really do. I think that he was, because of the teams he played on weren't like huge media cities. Like Vancouver was, Canada was pretty major, but still next to like Toronto and Montreal and some of the other ones that have had success in terms of Canadian teams, not super popular. And then you go down, he went to Florida, which, I mean, we know what Florida was. No one gives a crap about Florida in terms of the media, I should say. And that's where he started as well. So I feel like he was always heavily overlooked because of the teams he played for. If he had played for a team like Detroit or Chicago or New York or Pittsburgh, he probably would have won, a Vezina or Vezina number
Man,
2, but he also
really,
played in a tough era too with guys like Marty
for
Brodeur.
sure, yeah. Really repping Vancouver this class, eh?
Oh yeah, I noticed that
Big
too.
time, big time. I mean, obviously the Sedin, and then Luongo at like you said, starting finished in Florida, but um, yeah, the big, the prime, you would argue, in Vancouver there in the middle.
Yeah. So again, I guess my final comment on this whole situation
How
with
did that
the
Canucks team not have more team success? What are we doing?
I don't know, man. They had some
What are we
incredibly
talking
deep
about?
teams, and I don't know how obviously they lost in Game 7 to the Boston Bruins. That was brutal. That
Right,
was
yeah.
tough.
They
But I
lost
don't
in
know.
6 to the Hawks too in 08-09 when they had a 100-point season as a team. 103 season in 9-10. They lost in 6 to the Hawks again. Apparently they just couldn't beat the Chicago Blackhawks. And then 10-11 obviously was the big year, and that was the year they lost to the Bruins.
Some teams that just happens to, they build a Stanley Cup contender and they just can't get it done.
111-point season in 11-12, and they lost to the Kings in the first round, who then went on to win the Stanley Cup that year.
Yeah, that had to be a slap in the
That
face.
team had 95 points in the regular season.
So there were 2 other people who were introduced into the Hockey Hall of Fame. One of them was Riikka Sallinen. She played for 30 years professionally in Europe between Finland and Sweden.
That's
and
nuts.
Absolutely killed it the entire time. 5'4", which I guess in women's hockey is probably I don't know what the average height is in women's hockey.
Not as small as in like the league though.
Yeah. 1988.
That's crazy though.
All the way until 2019. So that's incredible.
Jaromir
it's also awesome
Jagr,
that they're
baby.
going the female Jaromir Jagr, but the fact that they're going out of their way to like induct people who were not who didn't play in America in the North American leagues is incredible too, because that's somebody
Very
who
cool.
I mean 30 years of professional hockey is insane. That is so impressive.
Yeah, no, the Basketball Hall of Fame does a really good job of that too. They do take from leagues all around the world. They call it the Basketball Hall of Fame instead of the NBA Hall of Fame, so that they can induct people from all different leagues and just people who are important to the game of basketball. So that's a really cool I don't even want to say gesture, because that makes it that's like I can't think of the word. I'm sick. But that's like taking away from her accomplishments. That's just like a super cool thing, and it sounds like it's very much deserved. And 30 years, golly, man, that's impressive as heck. That's impressive.
I mean, she had all kinds of international success on the big stage as well. So I try to find the correct tab. Yeah, world championships, Olympic success, bronze, gold, silver, all of it. She was just
Everything.
She killed it, and until her final season playing professionally, she was over a point per game, and that was in 2019, where she was well into her 40s. That is
that's super
absolutely insane.
Super
There was
cool.
also Herb Carnegie is going on in as a builder, prominent name in building the hockey community up amongst the Black community.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, there's a lot of cool articles about him that you can go read and just learn how I want to say vital he was to the growth of the game and stuff. But there's so many cool articles out there, and there's one by I think Bleacher Report that says junior hockey level at 19 years old, really took over the game, and they title him as one of hockey's first Black superstars. So having that and the being such an integral part to the growth of the game is super, super cool.
The final thing we'll end the show off on is the Red Wings made a small move last week. We haven't quite talked about it yet, but Victor Brattstrom, the Red Wings signed to a 1-year contract extension. He's an RFA, so he signed to 1 more year, making less money than he made previous years. He's making just $750,000, which I believe is the league minimum on a 1-year, one-way deal. His last season, he only played with Grand Rapids and Toledo, going up and down between them. .894 save percentage in 32 games with Grand Rapids, .829 in the ECHL with Toledo Walleye. This is a Grand Rapids signing. This is a Grand Rapids goalie signing. He was drafted in 2018. His development hasn't been that stellar. I'm not expecting him to be, on the NHL level anytime soon, unless it's on an emergency basis. But this is a signing just to give a goaltender to Grand Rapids, essentially.
Yeah, for sure. We it sounds like this past season we realized that goalie depth is very important, and it's not a mistake that we're ever going to make again.
Yeah, especially with Magnus Hellberg and
Yeah,
this other guy that they just signed out of Europe. Man, they're all over the place with these goalies.
they are not going to be thin at the goalie position ever again. That is not a mistake that's ever going to be made again. Yeah.
But yeah, guys, let us know in the comments what you think of Henrik Zetterberg not making the Hall of Fame. Do you think it's a snub? Do you think it's deserved? Do you think he'll get in at all? And we'll be back with you guys tomorrow. Same time, same place. To your team every day.
Every day.